Hi everybody, it's been a really busy day and I want to walk you through the process, my favorite process as to what I love about painting and why I paint, and just show you how I incorporate art into my life, how I tend to be quite prolific and how I stick with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about where I'm at. You'll see all these watercolor backgrounds that I have started. I did these last evening just before I was winding down for bed. This is when I was working on a landscape and I really wanted to explore the more opaque or solid watercolors, almost more like a gouache or an acrylic paint over top of those translucent watercolor layers. So I'm of course not finished this piece, but I had started this piece probably about a year ago and it was in my drawer of papers. I recently purchased some awesome IKEA long drawers and they fit really long, large pieces of paper. So I'm able to store my work a lot more easily and more safely than I have been doing over the last number of years. So I was just grabbing some pieces of work and deciding how do I want to finish them and play with them and resolve them, as Helen Wells would say. I love Helen Wells art. And yeah, so last evening I probably painted 5 or 6 backgrounds, this being one of them. And this is another one I had done. This palette is really speaking to me right now. I'm not sure what it is about it. I just love the colors. I added in almost a dark, I would say it's like a kind of a charcoal bronzish shimmery. It was a gelato I had used and I just used it to darken up some areas to really show the contrast. And I'm gonna do mark making over the top of this when I feel like it. I might go back to it tonight. And my favorite process though is just getting down these watercolor backgrounds. And to be honest, I would just stop there if I wasn't selling my work and working as a full-time artist as a living. The joy of the process for me is often just these background watercolor layers. And I do like the mark making process over top, but I would say more often than not, I just crave getting down color, getting down these flowy watercolors, the pigments, watching them move and create these beautiful blooms and images. And I love exploring my imagination and creativity is where I'd want them to go, finding my style through these backgrounds. But I love the fact that these are all unique because you can't really copy, emulate. I mean, you can emulate. It's hard to though copy and imitate a style when it's very watery, very flowy, when, you know, I don't stick with colors right out of the tube for watercolor or right out of the palette. As you can see, I have so many different brands of watercolor that I've accumulated over the years, and I'm learning to love certain ones, but I'm also learning last evening to venture out and use palettes that I would not normally go to. I really like this one as well. It's a composition that I like because it leaves a lot of white space. I started out with that beautiful neon pink, which you can see last evening was just calling me. That's how I started a lot of my works. This is the little art journal that I had recently showed you all in one of my YouTube videos, and I think it's called an accordion journal. I do not remember the course or the video. It might have been one of those free videos that you can get sent to your email on art journaling and how to make your own journal. I do want to tell you there's so many awesome make your own journals videos on YouTube, so check those out. This one I had done the front and I had sort of started to done the sides. I'd finished the sides, and then here's that neon pink again. I'm wondering, did I paint? No, I didn't paint that upside down. Did I? This is really funny. I painted it last night and I was so in the moment. I can't remember. This would be the right side up, but I almost feel like that's not the composition I did. So how funny is that? Whether or not I'll use this as right side up or flip it over, I'll decide that on the day I go back to it. I may go back to that tonight. And we're gonna paint a few watercolor backgrounds in this video today. I also wanted to show you one of my discoveries was this art journal. This is by Canson. It's a mixed media journal. I had purchased this a really long time ago and it got put away, caught up with some books, and I hadn't gone back to it. I don't know if this one is still available. I believe they've changed their series, but it's 138 pounds, which I highly recommend if you like doing watercolor in a journal. So getting really good quality paper, nothing less than 98 pounds. So you always want to go up to 140 if you can, or even thicker if you have the budget. 138 pounds really has been perfect though. This is an art journal I had been playing around with. I was cleaning my brushes, so I was looking to see here. I cleaned my brushes and I just was taking some notes. I'd have to read to actually see what it says. It's very hard to read, but while I was in the process of discovering my art style, I would create these mind maps and with a center concept. And actually this one says fears, which is really interesting. I will have to look back at this. But anyway, this page was really cleaning off that excess reddish pink. And now I can go back in over top with my Neocolor crayons and really turn that into a beautiful, beautiful painting. This as well. So you can see when you're cleaning your brushes, you get so much energy. So not only are you saving paint from going down the drain or, you know, directly into the garbage off of a palette, you're getting down a color that, you know, some of these colors, these are very sort of straightforward colors, but in this one example here, I had started cleaning my brush and I was also working on learning how to do mono printing or jelly roll, sorry, not jelly roll, that's the pen, jelly printing, and those jelly plates. I really just couldn't get it down, but I would say the best I had gotten was on this page. So I was cleaning my brushes and you can see, I'll just zoom you guys in really without wobbling you too much. I'm using a very old tripod. There we go. You're vibrating a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just waking you all up. So for those of you that use my video as ASMR, I'm just gonna interrupt you for a second with my wobbly video. Well, mind you, you wouldn't be looking at the camera, right? Anyway, okay, sidetracking. Look at this gorgeous leaf that is coming in right here. I can't recall how I did this, but I had to have used real botanicals, real leaves from here in Calgary, Alberta, from outside. I think this was a stencil. When I first started getting into art and painting and mixed media art journaling, I would buy commercial products more than create my own. I would use a lot of stencils in my work and just play around. So that was definitely a stencil. But last night I went over this with watercolor. So it was primarily acrylic, and then you can just see the opacity of some of the watercolors I used, the Kuretake, and I have some shimmer in here, which I really like. And so this is an example of how you can combine watercolor and acrylic. And it's also an example of how I was cleaning my brushes and practicing mono printing and now coming back to it and seeing this as like, I really, really love this. And it's very busy. It's not my typical style where I leave a lot of white space. I do think though, having one style is totally overrated. As an artist, we need to continually expand our knowledge and branch out and try different things. And I say within my style, within my color palette and my favorite mark making and my favorite imagery, I have come up with multiple styles that I would kind of consider my own artist style throughout those themes. If that makes sense. This is another page. I saw this last night and I thought, oh my gosh, this is actually, it's like pretty, but it's kind of ugly at the same time. I don't love it, but it's really interesting because I have all this texture. I was somehow smushing paint on top of paint. You can see I was doing some etching here, playing with crayons. And yeah, I'll come back to that and I can completely cover that up. That's the bonus of like really high quality watercolor paper, is it can really take a fair bit of media. This is another one I'll go back to. So again, just play. I'm not sure what I was doing here. I did a lovely blue and green watercolor background, and then I have all this pink acrylic paint, and I think it's because I was doing a large acrylic painting, and what I do is I just grab the first piece of paper I can find, whether it's in a book or separate, and I clean my brushes. So I just want to show you some of the brush cleaning. Like, it's just really interesting, right? And when you think about it, it's super easy. And this one, I love that shimmer. I think I was cleaning my brushes, but I was stuck in my head that it had to be a painting eventually, because this is a more controlled page. Enough about that. And where are we here? I'm going to just do a watercolor background in here. Well, first, what can I do? I get so excited. Where do I want to start? Let's just start with this blank page, and I'm gonna see, I will leave you zoomed out, and what I'm gonna do is activate my watercolor palettes. Oh, there's a lot to activate here. I'm so sorry, but because I mix and match my watercolors, these are all from tubes from ages ago. A lot of these are Daniel Smith watercolors, which are really high quality artist grade watercolors. I love. These are some really, really old watercolors that I had, or I think my dad might have even had when he was doing some painting a long time ago. And I'm just gonna activate them. And so that way, when you spray them with water, especially it's so dry here in Calgary, some of you would think, oh, I am not gonna spray my paints because you might be dealing with humidity. You don't have that issue with things drying out so quickly. I'm gonna spray my palettes. I got this new palette, this Kuretake palette, Kuretake, this Japanese watercolor palette. I'm really, really loving that. It's called Art Nouveau, and I can always link it shortly here in the description. And what I like to do, I got my paper wet and that's okay, is I'm just gonna line you guys up and get my brush wet. And I really like how I stepped out of my comfort zone last evening, painting with colors I wouldn't typically paint with. So again, it's a lot of mixing and matching. I'm just gonna see, I'm gonna go with this green. It's a beautiful, I think this is sap green actually. I think this is one of Laura Horn's favorite supplies that I believe I had purchased when I was doing one of her courses. So I have that beautiful sap green, and then I have no idea what this one is. I know it's green. It's really dark. Dark, beautiful. And I got a lot of pigment going on. I'm just gonna spray it. Look at how that spray just really took the pigment, and it looks kind of cool how it did that. Now what I'm gonna do, you can see I'm adding the color in a few different areas. I'm also gonna start a little painting over here just to use up that watercolor on my brush. And I'll do a similar composition. And now I kind of feel like adding in a metallic bronze. I believe this is a Daniel Smith watercolor. It probably is called iridescent bronze. I do really love that color. And I like it next to green. It's sort of like that rose gold color. So I'm gonna slip that in there. And I'm also going to, you can see how much I love this peachy pink because I've dipped into this with that peach, which you can't really see there. So I'm gonna go into my palette, which is running really low from the Ocean Paper Kawaii. My heart goes out to everybody involved in the Maui fires and all the animals. I think sometimes painting just takes my mind off some of the heaviness of what is going on in the world. I just added that opacity, so some watercolor with a little bit more opacity. And I'm really craving, you can see I'm just using an old towel here today instead of a paper towel. And I'm really craving a fuchsia color. This one's quite bright pink. It's almost like that Daniel Smith opera pink. I'm going to, what color is this little one here? This little one here is ultraviolet, and this is by the Canadian company Stoneground Paint Co. out of Saskatchewan. I really love their paints. And I just really love that color in here. I'm not going to do a ton of it because I can always add more. I can always brighten it up. Kind of mixing the colors up here. And this is just on my Artist Loft affordable watercolor page. Oh no, Strathmore. Wow, $3.75. I got a really good deal on this. Strathmore watercolor paper. Very good watercolor paper. I'm going to go in and add this iridescent gold, I believe it is. Again, a Daniel Smith metallic. And I don't know if I have the names quite right, but again, I want you to just go with colors you're craving in the moment and not being afraid to kind of mix and match on your page. Maybe going into colors that you wouldn't typically use. And it can really teach you a lot about your work and your style. You know, maybe you start going back to certain colors all the time. If you have a watercolor palette or a tube, look at all of the dents that are in certain colors and how often you use them. I'm going to use, let me just think. I'm going to use this, it's almost like a yellow ochre, this Kuretake yellowish green, and I'm just going to pull it down and around here. You can see it's bleeding up into this area. My paper is quite wet. So for this journal, I'm probably using media that's a little bit too wet, but that's okay. You can always flatten it. If you have some heavy books and you just get a really flat surface like a countertop or a table, and you can really flatten watercolor fairly well. The larger the paper, the harder it is to flatten. Whoops, I just dipped in some gold, which would be a great opportunity maybe to do some dot work in here. And get it out on the page. And I don't know how much I love the mark making with my finger, so what I can do is go in with, I'm gonna go in with this opaque watercolor, almost like a gouache, and just let it do what it wants. So I just really, these colors are speaking to me. I'm gonna go into this dark, it's almost like a black, dark blue, dark black. It's not quite black, which is great. Sometimes a lot of artists I've heard don't use black directly, but I like to, although I also keep in mind that it could be fairly harsh to the viewer's eye. So especially with watercolor and acrylic, I will mix in a little bit of another color like a Prussian blue or so right now I'm just craving colors in the moment and getting them down on the paper. I'm craving a really bright red over top of this area here. And I was really gentle because I know that this is a bit damp. So I really gently went in because I know it will bleed and I don't want like a huge amount. I have to be mindful to sort of talk about more of what I'm doing, I know, in my videos, but I probably wouldn't be able to do these YouTube videos if I had to explain absolutely everything. I just get so absorbed in what I'm doing. So just hopefully my videos can inspire you in some way, even though I don't give all of the details that a lot of YouTubers who are artists can give. Because I've been getting so many awesome recommendations, and the world of artists on YouTube is pretty amazing, and I have a lot to learn. Some really, really great people out there who are sharing, which is nice. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry, and what I was gonna do, I already sidetracked. I'm gonna take you through this process of letting this work dry. I'm gonna set it aside. I've not used WD-40 in my chair, and I'm not gonna worry about it. You know what we can do? Let's paint this little journal. So this is just 140-pound paper, and these little journals are really great to travel with. So I'll break into this fairly new ocean palette, the ocean paper palette from Kauai. And I don't know this palette very well, so I'm just deciding, where do I want to start? I often start with dark, but I'm gonna just add in some light colors here. I'm gonna dip in. I love whatever this color is here. It's like a grayish purple color. I'm not cleaning my brush in between. It's just an art journal spread, and it's just really about play. And I really am liking that so far. I don't use a lot of variety in my blues. You can see I didn't clean my brush when I dipped in there, and that's why I didn't get a really solid color. I am gonna clean my brush, and I'm gonna add this gorgeous rusty color here. I use a lot of pigment and a lot of water. I don't really want that yellow to hit the blue because I don't know a lot about color theory, but after years of practice painting all the time, I know what I don't like, and I do remember I don't like that yellow and that blue. It's just a little bit too much of a green, and I don't really want to bring green into this palette. So I'm just going with colors I'm craving in the moment. And I am liking that beautiful turquoise that I got, and I'm just gonna go across my page here. And I really want to add in a beautiful fuchsia. I've been just craving, I guess, fuchsia. This color, it's kind of a pink. Let's just see. It's a little bit too dull. My watercolors, some of them are already drying, even though I put quite a bit of water on them. So I'm just not overthinking anything. I am really just putting colors down that I love in a way that feels comfortable with my brush and my hand. Sometimes I'm squinting my eyes. I often add metallics because they just take my art to the next level, I find, the watercolor. So I'm just gonna drop in some metallic. The Daniel Smith watercolors, the metallics, are very high quality, and there is a lot of shimmer in them, which is pretty amazing. So this is pretty wet. I'm gonna add in more of that color through here. I'm gonna add this color on this page. And maybe add a little bit of pink over top. And now I'm kind of zeroing in on this particular painting, which is funny. I'm gonna add some gray, maybe some sort of grayish color in here. Take out some of that bluish purple that I just am not loving. And I often don't edit my work when I'm working on it like this, but all depends on the day. I'll set that aside. And I feel like a really nice light yellow would be great over in this corner. And let's just see. Oh, I do have that really beautiful light yellow in the ocean paper palette. And what I want you to do is not get hung up on colors at all. I want you to just know that every time you sit down to paint, I'm just gonna see if you guys are still there. Yeah. Sometimes my video, it's cut out on me before, so I was just checking above here. You're here and you can see what I'm doing. Because this is small, I'm gonna just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, and what I wanted to say is practice is what makes, well, I've heard practice makes progress, right? You will just be amazed by, if you can just sit down and just play, turn off your mind, try to love the process, you know, because if you're putting pressure on yourself while you're painting, even after you're painting, you are going to get to a place where you probably get turned off painting, you don't love it. You really need to go in with the mindset that even if you're not creating something that you think is beautiful or going to be beautiful, it's all practice and it's all going to add up to amazing things. You are going to find your own style. And it really, finding your own style really is just about putting in the time, showing up, even if it's just turning on a video you love and putting it on in the background, even while, say, you're doing chores around the house. Or I know for myself, I would often take a class or put on a video of an artist I enjoyed, and I'd have it on in the background, and I would just sort of take it in, but I wouldn't necessarily be painting along. I found that way too frustrating and complex. And just having a video on in the background, you'd be amazed at how much you're picking up, even though you might not be painting. It's all about mindset, is just reminding yourself that it's about play, reminding yourself that you're doing this for yourself ultimately. And if you constantly remind yourself that it's for you, you will eventually be able to sell your work. You will create amazing work. And I know that 100%, that if I could do it after working as a nurse for so many years, and really my earlier paintings were pretty bad, but I see them now as not like terrible paintings. I just see them as how far I have come and how I learned so much. You know, there were so many days I'd be really frustrated and I'd want to have a fully finished painting at the end of the day, and it wouldn't happen. And I knew that I couldn't keep painting unless I had that open mind of knowing every moment of just, say, taking a photo outside or looking at, you know, maybe Pinterest without going down the rabbit hole, just, you know, saying I'm just gonna spend 20 minutes looking at Pinterest because I'm really tired. I don't feel like pulling out my art supplies. It's one thing, do have your art supplies in a place where you can see them. You'll be more likely to use them. And yeah, so taking photos, you know, going for a walk, noticing things you may not typically notice, you know, in your day and outside, and what appeals to you. Right now I'm using brown, which is interesting. I don't use a lot of brown, so. But, you know, taking photos, say you just take one photo a day of something that inspires you, a flower or a leaf or a person. you know, if you did that every day for a year, you might need more space on your phone and your computer like I do, but you will have 365 days of inspiration to go back on. And I think when you get in that habit, you won't actually need to go back and even look at what the photo is, because just the process of taking that photo is almost like you're in that moment, you're just appreciating what you love. And I do think that will kind of come out subconsciously, you know, with whether it's courses you end up taking or, yeah. And like I said, I started out just with like commercial supplies, stencils, stickers. You know, I didn't feel like I could create anything to call my own or that would resonate with other people, and I was so wrong. And if someone had told me back then, you know, maybe that would have been too much pressure and I would have stopped painting. But I also wish I had known how quick you can really hone in on your own style just by the doing. And just by, you know, say doing a really messy abstract background like this one. I'm just gonna tear this off. It's pretty wet. Actually, I'm probably gonna rip it, so I'll leave it here. But what I would do is, you know, I'd do these backgrounds and I would set it aside if I was just not enjoying it. And if there's one I really liked, so for instance, this one is drying here, I would put this on my fireplace, and when I sat down in the evenings to watch TV, I would put it in a place where I could see it, and I would look at it and decide, what is it that I love about this painting or this background? What is it that just doesn't seem to sit well with me? And what might I do the next day to make it different? And I had a lot of time in 2020 with the pandemic, and that is sort of how I would really hone in on my own practice. So there's my buzzer. I hope you've had some inspiration with me today, but thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon.